thrown in the deep end. I was suddenly working with some of the biggest brands in the world. And it was so interesting to me. I'm going to connect back to the story, right? That
Sure.
David, Analyst-Designer, who couldn't figure out whether the customers were happy. I saw this, I could see this in the teams I was working with these Fortune 500 companies, banks, SaaS businesses, publishing companies in the US and whatnot. And it was the spark in my mind of, I've always tried to build a business, and this is the industry that I know, right? This is what I use. I'm a designer, I love software. This is it. And that is the birth of Hotjar.
I can imagine that you are as relevant today as you were maybe a few years ago, because as the internet revolution continues to happen, more and more people are saying, let me get a myopic view of what's working and what's not. Every dollar needs to convert. And if it's not converting, I need a Hotjar. Now, David, I love your t-shirt, by the way. And totally now up to you. For our audience who love your product, who love your thing, I saw all the people who interview you. They are super excited even before they get started. And can you tell us, very briefly, who is David and your story?
Yeah, that's great. And now I'm looking forward to do a 10-second version of it. So, look, who is David? I have two children, 4 and 6. My wife is also a superhero, a Swedish superhero. I was born in Australia, but I now live in Malta. Family is everything to me, and that's why Hotjar is a fully distributed company. So I've been close to the family and fully dedicated to our life, which comes first, freedom and family, since 2014. But if we rewind a little bit, who is David? I'm a designer at heart. I like to build things and solve problems. And when I was in Australia, I remember my dad very early on, because the technology was available, unlike Malta, had this very early Mac computer and had a big printer, because he was creating like leaflets for the community of Maltese in Australia. And I remember this noise of this Mac switching on. It was the Plus. It was the very first one. I still have it in my office with that smile, right? Like,
right.
So that interface, right? The fonts, how it worked, PageMaker version 1. That is David, right? Now, if we fast forward a little bit, I took that and even though...
Sorry, I lost your audio. No, I can't hear you. I lost your audio. You said even though, and I lost your audio there. If your earphones have run out of battery, then you can remove them. Yeah.
It's odd. Can you not hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
How weird is that? Looks like the computer took a break there because everything stopped working.
Perfect. Now you're fine.
So where were we? Yes, I was saying
even though, yeah.
Yeah. So fast forward from there, even though I studied to become a lawyer, and I did that, God knows why and whatnot, my passion always remained design, right? So I'll never forget, my dad got me my first job when I was 15, and I was supposed to be selling tickets for a cruise ship between Malta and Sicily. And I remember I was really bored, but a couple of weeks in, the ship I was selling tickets for stopped operating. Like a fishing net got stuck in the screw or something. And I remember our bosses said, well, we can't send you home. You're just going to have to stay here and do something. And I was like, I can design. Like, if you give me a shot, I'll make you new brochures, everything new for the company. And they're like, sure, we're paying you, might as well. So this was my first opportunity, and I just ran off. I did this. On the back of it, I got a job working with a German firm here in Malta. And this was just the beginning of my career in design and whatnot. Fast forward even more, I started doing logos. I got some gigs. I was designing stuff. This is all offline, right? There was no internet yet at this point. But at that point, I got a break. A client I had, an international client, told me, "You're doing the logos for us and whatnot. Will you do us a website?" And I was like, "I have no idea how to build a website, but obviously," I said, "of
Yes.
course." So I went, I figured that out. I learned how to do that on my own, and I was hooked. But the big thing at this point, which was very frustrating to me, was I was building this website. It had a lot of traffic because this was a very famous international comedian, funny enough, right? So I was running his website, and the client, his agency, wanted to build it in a certain way. And I was like, I don't think people like it this way. But there was no way to measure it, right? There was
Mm,
no way to know, is this good? Is it bad? Is it performing good enough? And I like to mention this in my story because this was the point where analyst David, right, the designer who's still analytical, was pissed
sure.
off, right? And I didn't like the idea that back then a website was good or bad defined by an award that you win or by the client
Ah,
being happy. I was constantly thinking, I like to empathize a lot about the customer, the fans of this comedian. Do they like
right.
this website? And I couldn't figure it out. Anyway, fast forward, I joined a software company here in Malta because I wanted a full-time job. And I learned so much from them. And I did it mainly because I had tried to start a business. This was a long time ago. I was trying to build a Shopify kind of approach, but it didn't work.
Right.
But working with them, I met my co-founders today at Hotjar, and I also learned what it takes to sell online, conversion rate, right? Like all the metrics, branding, marketing. So this was an amazing experience for me. They invested in me. They sent me abroad. More importantly, I met my wife there. So it was a very
Lovely.
good return on investment of
Of
my time.
course.
On the back of this, I then got a consulting gig. This was a huge break. And I chose this consulting gig because I was based in Malta, right? So it was very limiting here in terms of opportunities, people to meet. But I love Malta. So I wanted to kind of expand my opportunities from here, but I didn't want to leave. So, and this was the time. So this was 2012. I was getting married. My wife and I were like, we want to travel, we want to do stuff. And this was the beginning of this movement that today many people call remote, right? And I
Of
was like,
course.
I told my wife, I want to work remote. So back then I was obsessed about conversion rate optimization.
What year
And
was this, David?
so this was 2012. So in
Nice.
2012, this was the moment David wants to be remote. I want to travel the world. I want to open up my opportunities. Um, I saw that I was obsessed about conversion rate optimization and all of that, optimizing and whatnot, which sits perfectly at the middle of design, product, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the experts in this field were running a remote business and had vacancies. So
Lovely.
I applied and nothing. I didn't hear back from them, but I didn't give up. So I kept on waiting and hoping for this dream. I contacted again. And then a few months later, they reached back and they're like, "Oh, so sorry. Like we missed your application." And at this point, I told my wife, the remote dream is over. And I'll never forget, we were in Thailand and I received this email, like, "Can we interview you immediately?" Anyway, long story short, switched over to them, thrown in the deep end. I was suddenly working with some of the biggest brands in the world. And it was so interesting to me. I'm going to connect back to the story, right? That
Sure.
David, analyst-designer, who
Of
couldn't
course.
figure out whether the customers were happy. I saw this, I could see this in the teams I was working with these Fortune 500 companies, banks, SaaS businesses, publishing companies in the US and whatnot. And it was the spark in my mind of I've always tried to build a business, and this is the industry that I know, right? This is what I
Right.
use. I'm a designer. I love software. This is it. And that is the birth of Hotjar, putting all the tools that are needed for people that are building experiences to measure and understand that human experience, the customer on the other end. Because in digital, as you know, it's very easy to be kind of hide behind the monitor and the numbers.
Sure. Fantastic. I love in your story how you lit up when you said, "Yeah, I met my wife," and when you spoke about the fact that you made that a brochure for that person who gave you that opportunity because you wanted to prove to the world that I am a designer and let me give me the opportunity of designing so that I can prove to everybody and validate the fact that I'm a designer. And
Agreed.
so it's good that the cruise ship didn't take off. And
Yes, thank God for that. Thank God for that. And actually, I didn't mention it, right? So I have to pinch myself today when I think that the dream of not just the product, but also the type of company we built, the values are important to us, empowering people, hiring people all over the world. Today, Hotjar is, we're over 150 people now, based in over
nice.
28 countries. So it's
Wow.
a very diverse, it's very interesting team. We're self-serve, like we're low friction, so we allow people to just use Hotjar wherever they are. We want Davids, right, very early on in their career to have
Of course.
access. So it's a freemium model. It's open. We don't want to set limitations. We have over 700,000 sites using Hotjar today, and yeah, it's great to see that we're just getting started, but we're already having an impact.
I can imagine. I can imagine that you are as relevant today as you were maybe a few years ago, because as the internet revolution continues to happen, more and more people are saying, let me get a myopic view of what's working and what's not. Every dollar needs to convert, and if it's not converting, I need a hot jar. So tell us, David, what was your initially? You're driven by passion. You're driven by an understanding of design and an understanding of optimization. But how did you go about? Aviana, can you say hello before you leave? The IMOTW happening. Aviana is leaving for school. She wanted to say hello for the IMOTW project.
Hi.
Hi, enjoy
That's
school.
David, and we have been doing our projects together. All the interviews are done by this girl and her sister, but today they had to go to school. But thank you very much for your time.
No worries. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Welcome.
So she got worried for a second. She said, "Oh my God, no, no, I have to go." Okay, so
Don't worry.
so how difficult was it to? Uh, okay, let's start with the how did you first get a co-founder, or did you first start a company?
You mean this company or any company?
This company.
So there's a tiny backstory.
Sure.
So I employed one of the, I brought on board one of my co-founders first to work with me on a project. I was paying him and we were together. That failed. Then two of our friends similarly were not doing very well with another project. And they were kind of what we were missing. So we combined together, and my brother-in-law came in to put his money and my money into the project. So it was kind of a bigger vision idea, and then let's come together and work together.
So when it comes to finding a co-founder, would you like to give us a few suggestions on what to do and what not to do? I mean, sometimes it's also an ego game. People are like, I am so good at what I do. My co-founder cannot be somebody who I worked with. Maybe there was somebody who you were working with and he was a junior engineer in the coding space, but you feel he's the right co-founder, but he was, you were his boss. And now because he's so good and he's running the show, you want to make him a co-founder. Would you like to tell us a few things about how to hire a co-founder?
Look, I'm quite opinionated about this. Like,
Sure.
first off, I think we need to start with, it all depends where you are in the cycle of life or entrepreneurship, right?
Sure.
If you're like me, it's your first shot. I think you need to focus on values. You have to have similar values. That's the most important thing. And find people. I used to think you want to find people who are different than you. I think they need to be very similar to you in like how they think, but find people that are really good in areas where you're not, right? Like, so you're building a team, ultimately. It's the first team.
Sure.
So sometimes people think that co-founders kind of have this kind of different element. It's actually the first team from which
Right.
all the other teams are then born, right?
Right.
Now, obviously, if you're a serial entrepreneur, you're doing it again, then a lot of these things would change. But I don't think we want to go into that. Then it's different.
Sure.
Then you're looking obviously for a different type of team to put something together. So, but I think in the context of this story, maybe people who are looking for tips because they want to start something for the first time, I think there's a danger of thinking about the perfect or ideal co-founders. I think it all comes down to, again, what is the project you want to do and succeed in? What are the skills that you need to put this together in the beginning, with a focus maybe not necessarily only on technical, right, but entrepreneurial, like what does it take to make this happen? and then not overthink it, just start.
Got it.
But I think the values fit is really important. Now, how does this apply to us, right? Like with Hotjar, the challenge when we launched was to build some, we were very bold in the sense that Hotjar was very wide, right? Like it's a very wide product. So I think back then I couldn't have made a better choice of bringing on board the best individual contributors I knew. So they weren't maybe the most experienced leaders. Actually, they had no experience in building businesses, but together we could spend 2 years building a very challenging product. And that's what was
Right.
needed. You know what I mean? So I think it depends by the project, but I think the biggest danger is to start thinking CTO, CPO, and all this stuff early on. At Hotjar, we had none of that. We were all individual contributors, you know, and that
I
comes
love that.
later when you
I
scale.
love that. I love that. Yeah. That makes so much sense. Don't think CTO, CF, all of that. When you put hats on different people, then you have different expectations, different judgments. And okay, got it. So you started the company, and then what was the challenge on getting your first few You were already known, you knew, you were working with big brands. When you started your own company, did you just call them and say, hop onto my company and you got your first client easy? Or was it a challenge?
That's a great question. That's a great question. The reason being, because since I was working through a consultancy, actually David did not exist. So I was not allowed to mention I worked for these big brands,
Okay.
and I didn't have a relationship where I could call them. So that was a big learning lesson for me in terms of in life, you want to build up this equity, right? That is available
Right.
to you as you do stuff. But anyway, but that didn't worry us that much because what we wanted to build with Hotjar, our model was, now I'm going to use big words, right? But it's consumerizing
Sure.
enterprise tools, right? So our vision back then was we had used tools like Basecamp, right? Or MailChimp. And we came from a consumer background, all of us. And we prefer that, right? Like we don't like this whole sales team and demo and everything. And so we were like, why don't we just create something super simple anyone can just access, right? Quickly. So we didn't want to build a business based on the phone calls. But the traction, so for us, the traction was very early on. We said, let's not make the mistakes we did in the past. We spent a year building a product and then figured out no one wanted to buy it. So instead, we're like, okay, build a very quick version of it. Version meaning there was not even an interface, right? So
Right.
Eric, our most like engineer, like our engineer whiz kid, he built a thing that he would tell us, yeah, it's working. I can tell you that it's actually doing it, but you can't see it. I'm like, okay, that's good. It's possible. Then we designed what it would look like, threw it on a homepage, and we're like, do you want this? It's this,
Yeah.
this for an amazing price, right? Like, do you have this itch like us, right? If you do, put in your email, and then we know, like, we'll let you know as soon as it's ready. And we quickly started to see people fill this in. Like we just shared it with friends, and we knew we were onto something when the emails coming in, we didn't know who they are. Like we would search them in our address book
Sure.
or in our network. Oh, I don't know him. I don't know her. So this is good. It's moving.
It's spreading. Yeah. So
Spreading.
to get for so a new so how did you, now let's come to the marketing. Did you say, so for people like yourselves, you're saying it comes naturally to be able to find an answer to why things are working? But for everybody else, did you actually have to say, I'll help you create the next $100,000 or find the hidden revenue in your business? Or what were your marketing lines or your email? What were you saying to people to say, come to Hotjar?
That's a good question. So look, first off, we were lucky because we had this problem ourselves, right?
Yeah,
So we didn't need to do a lot of customer development in terms of understanding what they were thinking.
right.
And the big problem that we were solving for, this was quite a big realization for me because my previous startups were more focused on let's help you make the money, let's help you lift your conversion rates. But what actually we found was that the problem we were solving for was not that. There was
Okay.
a few layers deeper in. That is what the organization was solving for, or the leadership. But the team who were playing a role with that, their problem was the tools that they like. Their tools were not, the tools they needed were not easy to use. And easy to use means they're not easy to approve, they're not easy to install, they're not
Okay.
easy to actually use. So actually, what we found, this was through testing, and then I explain how we tested, we realized that the big core pain was access to the tools to actually empower them, give them the insights to then themselves do the job. So they didn't want to hear a marketing message of increase your conversion rates.
Got
The
it.
message they wanted to hear was see how people are really using your site. You know what I mean? Like get the
Nice.
tools needed to find the problems. And we figured this out by just
Interesting.
running ads and seeing what people clicked on and what people put an email in for or didn't.
That single line that you said is going to be a huge value add to this interview, because most people who are entrepreneurs watching, they will realize that most of the time their messaging is so confusing out there in the market. Excellent. So moving on, you got your first few clients, you have a passionate team, you raised some, you've got some money from your brother-in-law, and everybody comes in together. And what was your sort of um, first breakthrough when you were like, this is here to stay? You know, initially, I know in a startup, co-founders might drift apart, funding might money might finish, the first few clients, that excitement goes away. When did you say, you know what? Or when can entrepreneurs actually say this is here to stay? When does the stickiness start happening? When is it that you're too invested in the game to, pull back?
Yeah, that moment is super clear in my mind. So as I said, we started seeing emails coming in we didn't recognize. We quickly built, well, obviously my experience in conversion rate optimization really helped, right? Because I designed a homepage which had persuasion in it, but then we went even further and we created kind of a gaming experience around it, right? So then what we started to do is when you signed up for Hotjar, you'd see a message saying, you're number 100 in the queue, share it with friends and you move ahead. If you're in the top
Nice.
100, you get a free t-shirt. If you're in the top 20, a free lifetime Hotjar account. But if you refer 5 friends, so a fixed reward system, right? We'll also give you 6 months free for Hotjar. So we kind of, my previous startup that failed was on this. It was on loyalty and gaming. So we took all our learnings and applied them to this.
Nice.
And this really was effective. And we started to see more and more kind of traction. So then this system that we built, which probably we could have built a product around this as well, but we didn't have
I'm
time.
sure.
Yeah, so we built like a little graph in the back and we said like, let's make a goal, right? Like our goal is we want to get, I don't know, 10,000 people signing up for this, right? And then we put out an ad. Again, I had done a lot of ads, right? So we did some ads on Facebook and all of a sudden we realized, first off, the ads were incredibly effective, right? So just to put this into perspective, the cost of acquiring an email, right, of getting an email was like $1.
Right.
And obviously this is Facebook a long time ago.
Sure.
But then what we started to see was the word of mouth picked up and all of a sudden this graph was just moving. And I think having experienced how difficult it is to get people's attention before, even when you're giving them something for free on a phone or meeting them, it was painful. This sudden inversion of roles, of suddenly people were emailing us, like, can we interview you? Can we do this? There's this magic that you feel of this has a life of its own. You know, so
Right.
this was quite early on, 3 months in, we knew this was going to be something magical.
Excellent. And all this while you're getting into this magical phase of your business, were you already married or about to get married?
So there's an interesting backstory here, which is when I was working as a consultant, I was making really good money, right? Like I was making good money, but I was at its core, I was unhappy. I think mainly because I'm a very purpose-driven person and I felt I was helping one customer at a time and it wasn't the
Right.
pace and impact I wanted. So I remember I started reading a lot of books that were recommended to me by the other amazing consultants I worked with because they were all much smarter than me. So it was a very good move. And I remember I was reading one particular book and I woke up my wife in the middle of the night. She was pregnant with our first child. And I told her, I've decided I'm going to quit. I want to start my own business. And I told her, I want to join forces with those guys. I'm going to ask your brother for money. And she's like, do whatever you want. Let's just go
Let me
back
see.
to sleep. But that's what she is, my most avid supporter. Whatever I say, you should just do it, trust your instincts. So yeah.
I love that. I know I can make out because I can make out in because in the first 5 minutes of the conversation when you said the most important thing was that I met her. That's why I keep bringing her into this conversation because I know how important she is to the story and to your story. And sometimes I traveled all around the world. I made a very connected following, if I can use that word. And every time I got an opportunity to travel to a different part of the world for a month, the first person I looked to was my wife, and she was like, "You're not saying no to this opportunity. You're going. We'll take care of things." So it's so much love and gratitude for our partners over there. Okay, so moving on, Hotjar. I know a lot of interviews have asked you this question, like you zoom to 25 million. Now, as entrepreneurs, you don't. There's a lot of like when during Corona, when 75 days we did 75 webinars and just exploded as a brand. And we did more revenue than we did in any other quarter during the worst quarter, after Corona. People were like, "Who are you? Like you're an overnight." Because we, David, we were doing 1,000 people coming for a webinar every night, 75 days in a row, and
Wow.
there were 2,000, 3,000 people registering and about one third of them coming. So 75,000 people heard me for 90 minutes, 75,000 different people every night. And then three times the size subscribed to our email list. They got to know about us. So it's about 225,000 people got to know who this guy is. A small, and they're like, "My God, this guy's did." And I was like, "I've been doing this since I was 18." So when it came to your $25 million mark and everybody's interviewing you and 25 million, it's a lot of hard work and iterations and doing all of that to be able to reach that mark. It's not that one pull of the lever and you're like, "Oh, this is how I did it, and you can do this too." So what would be your message to all the entrepreneurs who are listening? When does that moment come in to say, you zoom past, it's never forever, and then you stop, it's a plateau, and then you go up. But when is that one thing that happened? Is like, yes, I've arrived at least for the short term, and then there'll be another one. How do you recognize it, or do you just say keep marching, keep going? Some of these will happen, or what would be your message to entrepreneurs who want that kind of growth?
Oh, this is a great question, right? The way you articulated it's a very important question, and I'll say why. Look, I believe that to be successful and more importantly happy in entrepreneurship, you need to embrace that the game we're in is an infinite game, right? So there are finite games like Monopoly, right? There's an end,
Right.
and there's infinite games like a Cold War, right?
I like that.
So you need to understand what game you're getting into. And this is not me, like Simon Sinek has said a lot about this. It's a very interesting concept. It's very important, I think, that to come into entrepreneurship, like, and to build a business, they understand what you're getting into. You're not playing Monopoly. This is an infinite game. So it's constant. And the only way to make this infinite game successful is you need to set the right goal, right? So, and that's why it's so important. I always say to budding entrepreneurs that one of the biggest lessons for me was that when I was very young, my goal was to make $1 million. Like for me,
Right.
that was like just so amazing. If I can make $1 million, I come from a family who's always been employed and like can't complain. We haven't been poor, but you know what I mean? Like it's just
Sure.
unattainable, right?
Right.
But the big shift was when I started to realize that actually this game is not about the $1 million. It's about serving 1 million customers. Like, how do
Hmm.
I provide value to 1 million customers? And I think when you start to realize that, you start to realize that actually what's important when you're playing this game is obviously celebrating your wins as you go, but mental toughness and grit, and kind of building your company around the game as it is so important, right? Like you need to have a long-term view, a purpose, a goal, or else you run out of steam. And we
Right.
did run out of steam. There's been plateaus more than anything from morale point of view, right?
Right.
Like this is a gruesome, tiring journey.
Awesome. So 1 million customers. Do you think entrepreneurs who are listening to this, they could be in the service field or they could be in tech? And now tech has evolved to AI and machine learning and all of that. In 2021 and beyond, if there's an entrepreneur who's listening to David right now and saying, "I want to be the next David," or "I want to do you think he can do it without tech?
Do you think he can do it without tech?
Like, for
It's a
example,
good.
yeah, a restaurant or an agency business. There are many service-based businesses as well. And can they ever reach 1 million people without having tech as a core part of what they're doing?
Look, everything is possible, but we live in a world where it's going to be more difficult to do it. Because if we think about even brick and mortar, tech is still a core component of it, right? It's
Right,
an accelerator. It's there hopefully to serve us, not the other way around. But
right.
so I think it's very difficult to take it out of the equation. But yeah, I don't think it needs to be. It doesn't need to be a tech startup or a tech company to do that. Like
Got it.
100%. Like let's look at Greta Thunberg, right? Like
Hmm.
she
Hmm.
doesn't even have a business and yet she's
Right,
impacted 1 million people. You know what I mean?
right.
So
That's a
I
good
think it's
point.
more,
That's a good point.
and I guess, and this is very important, right? So I'm not saying that you necessarily need to serve 1 million people. I'm
Sure.
saying that needs to be your goal, because in an infinite game, you need unattainable goals, if that makes sense.
Nice.
So it's a little bit weird, but
I like that.
um, yeah.
I think that we've just found the title uh, for our show. For this one, for an infinite game, you need unattainable goals. I love that. It's almost
Wonderful.
like we can almost make it into a movie someday. Okay, so it's I loved when you said it's grit, and losing morale is a part of it. Having technology at the core of it can help it accelerate. But you gave a very good example that you can be a personal brand and impact people. Gary Vee is not really tech. He's all over the place,
He's impacted a
and
million people for sure already.
100%,
Yeah.
100% just by talking. And I remember meeting him in his office. Me and my daughters, we met him a couple of times. And every time that's what my elder daughter remembers. She's like, all he says is, "Are you happy?" And that's it. Done. Finish. End of conversation. So everything else stems from there. And you mentioned that as well. As long as you're happy, you're able to build. I love what Steve Jobs said about the dots connecting looking back when you're going ahead. Now, when I look at you and I look at your story and I look at, a tech startup like yours, with a very good revenue line and the right founders, everything. When a regular entrepreneur like me or others who will be watching this interview are looking at it saying that, what, David has it all figured out for the next 10 years. He can see I wish I could see the future as clear as David. so so I think your smile gave it away. But
Yeah.
but do people who are as successful as you with the team with all of that, do we all face similar challenges of an uncertain future?
100%, right? The David a year ago didn't know the things I knew today. The David 5 years ago didn't know the things I knew 2 years ago. And to be honest, the majority of the future is uncertain. And I like it that way. I think it needs to
Right.
be that way. Because I think if it's certain, again, and if I had everything figured out, what would this game be? You know what I mean? So,
Sure.
first off, David has not got it all figured out, right? That's
Got
very
it.
important. We're figuring out as we go. Look, I think, and I come across this a lot because I actually do get a lot of people when they speak to me, especially friends, like, yeah, you got all figured. And my answer to them is no. Like, I'm figuring it out day by day, and that's the work. You need to put in the work. And I think it's all about mindset, right? It's about, I think the moment you start to think that David's got it figured out, I think there's a danger of falling into a fixed mindset. A fixed
Yeah.
mindset is one where you think either you have the knowledge, or either you have the ability, or you don't, right?
Got it.
Or I can't improve, or I can't be like Avi, or I can't be like Gary. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that's a fixed mindset, because in reality, most of the champions in sports, they're champions not because of their muscles, but because of their mindset. They have a growth mindset, right? So I think it's all about growth. I think the moment that you realize, make mistakes, learn, go every day, just keep on going, and figure it out as you go. And I think all the other entrepreneurs I've spoken to, and I see it in your story as well, right? You're figuring it out as you go.
Sure.
The next thing, the next level.
Right.
So Hotjar at 10 million ARR, like we're like, shit, like what do we do next? How's this gonna work? And obviously it's SaaS, so there's a
Right.
predictable side to it.
Hmm.
But right now we're figuring out what is the future, right? Like what is Hotjar's second act? How do we grow from here? What are the teams we need? How do we change our go-to-market strategy? It's a constantly evolving journey.
Lovely. I love the fact that you broke it down into so many things that are uncertain, and a company like yours has to figure out go-to-market strategy, or because for a regular entrepreneur, like once it's done, and that's how you reach. So, thank you for saying that, because it helps everybody who's watching this realize that we're all in the same boat, and it's a journey of constantly figuring it out. And I cannot get it out of my head what you said 15 minutes ago. It's not monopoly, it's a finite game. So I'm just, for me, that's the biggest takeaway for me personally. It's an infinite game, because sometimes I get frustrated saying that, oh, by now I should have done this, and why am I getting this call again? I mean, this was sorted out 6 months ago. I should not be getting a call on this. But it's, my dad always, who's an entrepreneur, my parents are in their 70s, they work 12 hours a day. My dad always says three things. He says, Avi, uh, you will get calls for the things that you need. You need to see it as a sign, to see it's a symptom, and it could have ramifications. So go deep down and say, why is that call coming? There could be other symptoms similar to that. So all those calls are signals. Second thing my dad says is that try to talk less. You talk too much, you should talk less and listen more. and and the third thing he says is, if you can't figure out anything, get up at 4 in the morning, because there is a divine hour when you're quiet and there's nobody around. You find your answers over there. Which brings me to discipline. You look like a very fit man. So tell us, in your journey of growing a company, how important is discipline, mental and physical health to you?
I'm a big believer in discipline in general. And I wasn't that much like that in the past. It's something that came with age. Um, Look, I think it's important though to have a good balance between discipline and fun, though, right? So
Right.
I'm not like, I'm a big believer in, more than anything, self-discipline.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, so I'd say while I've given it a lot of importance, I've not always been very good at prioritizing it.
Hmm.
This last year, I've definitely given it a priority. So I've started to exercise every day. I do it from home because I don't like going to gyms. Like I
Sure.
had to figure out my own way of
Of
doing
course.
it.
You have a
Mentally,
Peloton bike or something?
no, actually, I just use an app. It's called Freeletics.
Right.
And it's just, you use your body weight to exercise 20 minutes a day and you feel fantastic. Especially if you're working remote, it instills this routine of exercise, shower. I like long showers. For me, it's long showers gets the, yep, same. There we go. Very, very effective. In terms of mental discipline, I've always been quite good at that, but to be completely honest, this last year has been tough for me. Um, Look, the more you grow and the more successful you are, maybe not everyone is the same, but for me, it was a case of there's a tendency that you have more to lose than to
Sure.
gain, right? And
Sure.
you start to have a little bit more uncertainties, right?
Of course.
So, and especially as choice becomes like wider and more abundant, right? So um, it took a little bit of toll on me. And then I'm a person that cares a lot. So the team growing amount of people, like I took too many things to heart. I
Yeah.
also, in hindsight, realized I became too much Hotjar, and Hotjar is me, and you start to connect things too much. So while we introduced, for example, a wellness budget for my team, I was a little bit too late to get on that. But now for a year, I've had a therapist, which is great. Like it's been really
Nice.
helpful for me. And we've invested more in vulnerability at work and opening up with each other. And also I'm doing meditation now, and I've changed my routine and also structured the way I work. Because as I said, it all comes down to grit and mental toughness, right? So I'm glad you asked this question, because I think, especially in the first few years, it's not that important. But I think if you miss the mark on this, it's very easy to kind of fall into a pit, right? So I think it's very important that I had the realization, I think it was in the shower 2 days ago, where I realized I'm probably stealing this quote from someone, right? But as an entrepreneur, when you think about it, right, the ultimate tool right? Like if you were a street racer, right? The
Right.
car, right? The way it's modded, the way, like, that is your tool, right? And you
Right.
invest a lot of time. Like, as an entrepreneur, your body, soul, brain is your primary tool, right? So you need to like it is your temple, right? So you need
Yeah.
to, I think you need to really think about like how do you take care of that? The sleep you're getting, like the mental wellness, right? The health you have and the exercise. Like I think very early on, because again, you're in this infinite game, you need to be training and prepared for this voyage. And I wasn't for quite a long time.
I love that. I mean, that I've almost never heard this in any of my interviews. And I'm so grateful for you for saying that, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a very successful entrepreneur, but he had a major upheaval in his personal life, which sort of set him off track. And as some of his closest friends, we were with him during that time, and we were talking about the fact that why is it that every single human being on the planet, especially not really especially, but because we're entrepreneurs, we're talking more about entrepreneurs. Like we have an HR department to go to, we have an accountant to say, you know what, I've got an accountant in house, but I'm talking to my chartered accountant to say how should I plan my structure. And I've got a mentor, like everybody's got a mentor, everybody's got a coach. Where is everybody's therapist? So I love the fact that you brought that out. And I personally have been thinking that do I need a mentor, or do I need a coach, or do I need a therapist? And this brings in, I think every single entrepreneur feels whatever you do, like you said, with all due respect to our spouses, they have their plate full. So to wake them up in the middle of the night and say, this is what I'll be doing. Sometimes you just get that 5-minute window while they're doing something else. You need a full-time therapist to say, hear me out, man, this is what I'm thinking about. Does your therapist need to be a successful business person, David?
No.
Okay.
Look, for everyone, it's different, right? So,
Sure.
for example, one of my colleagues in our senior exec team is our chief product technology officer, Mahanat. He's amazing. He got lucky. He actually found someone who helps him on both levels, both coaching and therapy, right? Like in my case, what I needed was like different. It's not to say I don't need a coach, but I think there's I think also a humbling aspect to it
Yeah,
to me, that my therapist is 15 years more senior to me. He's not a businessman, right?
sure.
But he's got it figured out from another point of view, right?
Of
Like his
course.
perspective of life, simplicity. And I
Right.
think for me, that is very grounding.
I absolutely love that, because I'm getting goosebumps thinking that what are all the other people who are going to watch this show? What are they going to say? You know what? Therapy for entrepreneurs? Some people are going to be shocked, and some people are like, I thank you for saying that, because a lot of people don't talk about it. It's like, why do I need
Very
it? I
important.
sh- it is so important to be able to. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a the wealth consultant, works for a large company, and he's obviously busy on the phone, stock market going up and down. When I tell him about my regular month, he's like, "You're crazy. How do you even deal with this?" He said, "Because in a setup, we've got everything happening for us, and we leave, and everything happens. For you, we don't leave." And I'm like, "We don't want to leave, and that's why we chose this." And sometimes I go to sleep. I don't know if it's good or bad, but sometimes I go to sleep with an out with a blueprint of what's going to happen in the next few weeks for a new product that I'm launching. And I'm like, you know what? When I sleep, and I'm like, I'm giving somebody some work in my head to say, let's figure it out. Be ready, because when I get up, we're going to have that discussion again. So be ready for that discussion. So I
I
see
know the
what you're saying.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. David,
Yeah. In fact, what
we're
we did
almost
that
coming.
I'll,
Sorry.
I'll mention this because I think it's worth saying it as
Sure.
well. At Hotjar, we're distributed not just by the virtue of the fact that everyone is based somewhere else. We've literally designed the business to be distributed in every possible way, right? So obviously, we still have a senior exec team, but we distribute ownership, we distribute budgets, we distribute allowances. So people approve their own leaf. No one approves your leaf. So again, we distribute power. We don't centralize it around managers. Our monthly departmental budgets are automatically distributed and allocated based on a formula. we don't have a big office. Instead, we have a working together budget. It's 2,000 euros per person to travel and meet anyone they want anywhere in the world.
Oh,
We have
wow.
many budgets and allowance. You receive your own credit card and you pay. It's trust from day zero. You see my point? But then one of the things we did, which is I think important to mention, is we gave everyone a wellness budget. It's 250 euros per month to use against a therapist, against even supplements, against anything that you need. And we plan to improve that as well. So I think on that topic, I think it's a very important topic to me. And I think as entrepreneurs, we owe it to others to kind of talk about the subject.
I love that. That is so fantastic. Thank you so much for saying that. David, we have just a couple of minutes. We finished the hour that we asked. Thank you very much for giving this your
You're
time.
welcome.
David, for everybody who's watching this, uh, just tell us more about Hotjar, where you're going, how they can log in, tell us about your website. Let's do a little bit of plugging in Hotjar now.
Sure. So Hotjar, we call it, it's a behavioral analytics tool, right? So it's, again, big words. What does that mean? We're all used to using analytics tools which show us numbers, right? Like web analytics or product analytics or user analytics. With Hotjar, we try to take you beyond the numbers to actually see and experience what your users and customers are doing. So what does that mean in practice, right? Like you can replay how they're moving their mouse or what they're clicking and what they're doing. It's all anonymized and
Yeah.
privacy friendly. You can create a heat map of how people are interacting with a page. You can ask them questions. You can do surveys. You can ask them to give input when they're frustrated. We identify when specific behaviors are happening. So all these things empower teams so that they can have the right insights they need to make the right changes then to improve the experience. And ultimately, we know that improves the bottom line. So that's what we do. As I said, Hotjar's, there's no friction. Anyone can just use it. There's a free plan. So even if you're a student or you just want to play around, right, or build a website or using Shopify, or even if you're a Fortune 500 business, like it's really easy. You just jump in, you use it, and within 24 hours, like you're literally getting live data from your website and seeing what the experience looks like. We also publish a lot of information and content because that's part of our purpose and mission where we're going. So hotjar.com/blog. We publish a lot of guides and information on how you can do this with your co-founders, your team, and whatnot.
Lovely. David, this has been a fantastic learning for me personally, and I'm sure
Same here.
because I like the fact that you talk in third person sometimes. David did this, David did this. It's almost like a chapter of a story. My editor is going to have a lot of fun editing this, making it into a
I hope
chapter-wise
so.
story.
Not a nightmare.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's going to be so much fun, and we're going to watch it again and again. The first thing that happens is my entire team watches the interview, just so that they get motivated. This is fuel for them to understand, and then we sort of chop it up and we promote it everywhere to everybody in our audience. And finally, the Internet Moguls of the World book, which comes up out very soon. So thank you for supporting us in this venture.
Sure
I'll
thing.
have a short 30-second conversation with you, but before that, I'll finish this show. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, as promised, we had the founder David from Hotjar telling us about life, wellness, a few mentions of one of the most important people in his life, his spouse, and the company, and health, wellness, fitness, long showers, and everything in between. Thank you very much, David. This is Avi Arya, father of 2 girls, 6 dogs, husband to a superwoman, a streetcar racer turned hotelier, now social media marketer and founder of Internet Moguls. We'll be putting in the description the links on everything for all of you people to be able to join Hotjar in the description. So stay tuned for this interview to come out in full. Thank you very much.